The evening was set with an air of glamour and hushed anticipation as the charity gala buzzed softly with conversations and clinks of glasses. Under the warm glow of carefully arranged lights, a crowd of influential figures mingled. Executives, players, and media personalities all drawn together by the promise of an unforgettable night. Amid the polite chatter and fleeting smiles, a simmering tension lay hidden behind the veneer of celebration. In a quiet corner near the entrance, Kyrie Irving stood with a distant look in his eyes, his gaze fixed on a figure whose presence had always been larger than life. Mark Cuban, known for his bold moves and business acumen, chatted animatedly with a group of investors, his trademark grin in place. Yet to Kyrie, that grin now masked a betrayal too heavy to ignore. Kyrie's mind raced with memories and unspoken truths as he recalled how Luka Doncic, a young talent whose potential shone brighter than any statistic, had once been treated not as a person, but as a mere asset, a commodity in a game driven by profit over passion. The hurt was not his own. It was Luka's, echoed in every misplaced trade and every cold decision that had reduced a promising spirit to just another number on a balance sheet. As the murmur of the gala swirled around him, Kyrie's heart pounded with the weight of responsibility. He had witnessed too many instances where the human side of the sport was sacrificed on the altar of business, and tonight, that injustice demanded to be spoken. Drawing a deep breath, Kyrie pushed through the crowd, each step measured and deliberate. His eyes, intense and unwavering, met those of Mark Cuban as he approached with a calm that belied the storm brewing within. Without preamble, Kyrie's voice broke the ambient hum, a quiet but piercing tone that immediately drew curious glances. "Mark," he said simply, his words carrying a gravity that cut through the superficiality of the evening. The investors paused, the soft murmur of the gala fading as all attention shifted to the unfolding moment. Cuban's smile faltered for a brief, telling second, replaced by a guarded expression that hinted at recognition of the challenge before him. For a few seconds, there was nothing but the silence of confrontation, a silence heavy with the promise of revelations. In that stillness, Kyrie's eyes spoke of a deep-seated disillusionment. He wasn't merely addressing a business leader, he was confronting the very system that had allowed a young man like Luka to be reduced to a trade, to a statistic. "You built around him, Mark," Kyrie continued, his tone steady yet laced with quiet fury. "But in doing so, you forgot he was a person first." His words, simple yet laden with emotion, hung in the air like an accusation that demanded an answer. Mark Cuban shifted uncomfortably, the easy charm that had defined him for so long replaced by a visible tension. His response came slowly, measured as if searching for a way to bridge the widening gap between business pragmatism and raw human need. "Kyrie, I did what I thought was best for the team," he replied, his voice low and edged with defensiveness. But even as he spoke, the lines in his face deepened, betraying the inner conflict stirred by the confrontation. The exchange, though quiet, resonated like an undercurrent through the gala. Guests exchanged furtive glances, and whispers of disbelief and anticipation began to ripple through the room. In that charged moment, Kyrie's words were more than just a critique. They were a call to remember that behind every contract, every trade, there lay a human story full of dreams, struggles, and unfulfilled promises. The atmosphere grew heavier as Kyrie's eyes softened just a fraction, hinting at memories of his own battles on and off the court. Battles fought not just for victories, but for the dignity of every player who had ever been overlooked. As the first words of this explosive exchange settled into the space between them, it was clear that this was only the beginning. What had started as a simple greeting had transformed into a powerful confrontation, a moment where the ideals of loyalty, respect, and humanity clashed head-on with cold business tactics. The audience, now riveted by every word, could sense that the story unfolding was one of redemption, of a truth that had long been buried under layers of profit and indifference. And as Kyrie stood his ground, his quiet determination a stark contrast to the flashy smiles around him, the seeds of a larger reckoning were being sown, a reckoning that promised to challenge not only the legacy of a famed entrepreneur, but also the very nature of how we value human connection in the world of sports. As the echoes of Kyrie's words faded, the room's energy shifted into a low, simmering murmur of disbelief and regret. Mark Cuban, still reeling from the hit of truth, stood rooted by the window with his eyes locked on the bustling city outside, as if searching for answers in the distant lights. In that charged silence, an unexpected voice broke through, a seasoned investor who had long admired Cuban's business acumen, but now hesitated. His tone was soft yet unwavering as he recalled a memory. The first time he had seen Luka Doncic on the court, a young player whose quiet determination spoke louder than any headline ever could. "I remember watching Luka play, not as an asset, but as someone with a heart and dreams," he said, his words hanging heavily in the air. The investor's confession stirred a ripple of recognition among the guests, many of whom had their own stories of being reduced to mere numbers. Cuban's confident mask cracked for a split second, revealing a flicker of remorse that he quickly tried to hide. Yet before he could muster a defense, another voice joined, a close friend of Luka who had lingered at the edges of the gala, watching the events unfold. "Luka isn't just a statistic on a piece of paper," the friend stated, his voice echoing the collective pain of those who felt unheard. "He is a person who carries our hopes, our struggles, and the promise of a better future." This sudden chorus of truth challenged everything Cuban had built his career on. The room, once filled with light chatter and polished smiles, now buzzed with raw, unfiltered emotion. Guests exchanged glances that spoke of shared disappointments, stories of being overlooked and devalued by a system that placed profit above people. The investor's words and the friend's heartfelt admission painted a picture far different from the cool, calculated environment Cuban had tried to maintain. Slowly, the murmurs turned into a steady dialogue among those present, as if the gala itself had become a stage for a greater reckoning. Even as Cuban struggled to find words that could diffuse the situation, it was clear that this was no longer just about a trade or a contract. It was a call to recognize the human cost of treating someone like an investment. The vulnerability in Cuban's eyes betrayed the truth that he, too, had once believed in the power of genuine care, a belief that now seemed lost amidst boardroom tactics and cold business decisions. In that moment, the gala transformed into more than just a celebration of success. It became a mirror reflecting the deep-seated need for respect and authenticity. The tension between business and humanity, between cold calculations and warm emotions, was palpable. And as the night pressed on, the gathered crowd found themselves questioning not only the choices made in the name of progress, but also the very nature of loyalty and trust in a high-stakes world. The spark of change had been lit, and everyone present sensed that the truth was on its way to reshaping a legacy built on more than just numbers. It was about valuing a person for who they truly are. The air had thickened as the confrontation swirled around Mark Cuban, whose resolve had been tested in every word exchange. With every passing second, more voices emerged from the shadows, unseen players who had been quietly watching from the wings of the corporate world. The tension in the room was overwhelming, and yet it was not deafening. Instead, it became a soft hum, like the draw of a breath right before the storm. Cuban, once a man with a reputation for quick wit and sharp defenses, now found himself at a loss for words. He could feel the intent gaze of his inner circle on him, waiting to see whether he could salvage the situation or whether this would be the beginning of his unraveling. Despite his public bravado, Cuban could no longer ignore the growing unease curling in his chest. Everyone present knew he couldn't shout over the mounting evidence of falsity in his own narrative. The truth, as Kyrie had made so brutally clear, had arrived in flames. Luka had been more than just his star player or his salary cap fodder. And when Kyrie continued, his words striking with precision, Cuban's defenses grew choked. "You never got it, Mark," Kyrie said, with just enough venom to sting. "Because while you measured his worth with profits, you never stopped to consider the one thing that could have saved him, that could have had him stay. Real care for who he was." The silence was deafening once again, the contrast of emotion ever more tangible. Billions of dollars had been poured into the Mavs, season after season, but no money could buy what was missing: a real connection, trust, loyalty, a sense of belonging. Kyrie's words cut through to Mark's very core, forcing him to face the glaring negligence that had led to Luka's departure. The pain in that moment wasn't only Cuban's. It was shared by those who had once called the shots but genuinely believed they had been doing their best. And indeed, this group had built something, but what they'd built had not been enough for Luka. Not the systems, not the endless contracts, not the press appearances. Pockets had been filled, yet so many hearts had been left unfulfilled. As the crowd began to sense the collective reckoning occurring right in front of them, a lingering heaviness came over the proceedings. The gazes of those watching now spoke volumes. Gone was the awe and cheery chatter that had originally marked the evening. What stood now more jarring than before was the undeniable weight of neglect for what truly matters. Some would walk out questioning the truths they'd accepted for years, others bitter for having ignored the hum of the underlying hurt. In those moments, it became clear that the true battle was not over ownership of the ball or crowning the next MVP, but rather about understanding what truly binds this world of sports together. It was a humbling realization. Personal connection means more than contracts. The price of relationships laid bare in dollar signs and profits. No trade could ever negotiate that price. No contract could withstand a lack of genuine trust. And yet, amid these realizations, there was a glimmer buried deep in the tension. If this rift could be healed, if this painful truth could lead to a future of renewal, change would herald a new way of thinking, one that recognized the flaw beneath the so-called glory of business as usual. For 32 seconds, in the charged silence that followed the heated exchange, the atmosphere shifted once more, as a familiar voice from the back of the room broke through the tension. An industry veteran, known for his candid insights, stepped forward with a question that cut directly to the heart of the matter. His inquiry was simple yet loaded. "Mark, can you truly say that every decision made was only for the sake of the game, when deep down there were moments you wished you'd done things differently?" The question hung in the air, forcing Cuban into a rare moment of introspection. His confident facade wavered as he began to recount memories that had long been hidden beneath boardroom bravado. He admitted that the seed of regret was planted the day Luka Doncic left the locker room, his eyes downcast and filled with a silent plea for recognition. "I thought I was building a winning team," Cuban murmured, his voice low and tinged with remorse. "But sometimes in chasing numbers and success, we forget the very soul of what we're trying to protect." His confession rippled through the room like a sudden storm, adding layers of complexity to an already explosive situation. At that moment, Kyrie's earlier confrontation took on a deeper meaning. It wasn't merely about a trade or a contract, but about the human cost of decisions made in the pursuit of profit. As Cuban's words struggled to find their balance, another unexpected twist emerged. A longtime friend of Luka, previously silent, stepped into the circle of light. With a steady tone and a hint of sadness, he recalled a day when Luka's genuine smile broke through the pressure, a smile that had lit up even the darkest corners of a challenging season. "Luka wasn't just another asset," he said quietly. "He was a beacon of hope, a young man who deserved to be seen and valued for his heart, not just his stats." This poignant reminder stirred the crowd further, igniting a collective reflection on what had truly been sacrificed in the name of business. The gala, once a glittering celebration of success, transformed into a confessional where ambitions, regrets, and lost opportunities were laid bare. Cuban's admission, laced with vulnerability and a longing for redemption, exposed the painful truth that sometimes the choices made for financial gain leave deep, unhealed wounds. The room was filled with an unspoken question. How much are we willing to trade off the warmth of human connection for the cold calculations of profit? In that moment, the true price of ambition became unmistakably clear. A price measured not in dollars, but in the hearts of those who dream beyond the scoreboard. The tension in the room deepened as the gala's festive air slowly gave way to a weighty silence that everyone could feel. After the heated exchange, whispers of truth and regret began to ripple through the crowd. As guests mingled in hushed tones, many revisited memories of times when they too felt reduced to mere numbers. when decisions were made that stripped away the humanity behind every contract and trade. In a quiet corner, Mark Cuban's phone buzzed unexpectedly. Glancing at the screen, he saw a message from Luka, the young star whose journey had been shadowed by the very choices being questioned tonight. The message was short, just a simple, "I feel seen now." But it struck Cuban like a sudden chill, forcing him to face the real-life impact of treating a person like an asset. As the news of this exchange spread through murmurs, a respected former teammate of Luka stepped forward from the sidelines. His voice, soft yet resolute, recalled a memory from long ago when Cuban had discreetly offered comfort to a struggling player. A moment that hinted at a spark of genuine care buried beneath layers of cold business tactics. That memory, now resurfacing, added another unexpected twist to an already charged evening. Guests began to question whether Cuban's hard-edged decisions were driven solely by ambition or if they were the result of pressures too immense to overcome. Kyrie stood a short distance away, his steady gaze never leaving Cuban's conflicted face. The air around him was heavy with a mix of relief and sorrow. He had spoken the hard truth, and while the cost was clear, it was a necessary blow to awaken the conscience of an entire industry. The conversation had evolved from a mere critique of trade decisions to a powerful reflection on the value of human life and the real cost of neglecting that value in the name of profit. Throughout the room, eyes met with silent acknowledgement, a shared realization that every decision, every trade, reverberated with personal consequences far beyond the balance sheets. As the evening wore on, the gala transformed from a celebration of success into an impromptu lesson in accountability, respect, and compassion. The unexpected messages, the candid confessions, and the brave confrontation had set in motion a spark for change. A call to remember that true leadership is measured by how we honor the people behind the numbers. In the quiet aftermath of that unforgettable night, the gala slowly wound down, leaving behind a heavy but hopeful silence. As guests departed, their hearts and minds weighed down by the powerful truths shared. The impact of the confrontation lingered like a gentle reminder of what truly matters. Mark Cuban, now alone in a quiet hallway, stared at his reflection in a darkened window, realizing that every decision he made wasn't just a business move. It was a choice that affected lives. Kyrie's words echoed in his mind, a call to see the person behind the player, to honor the human spirit that numbers can never capture. Meanwhile, whispers among the remaining guests turned into determined conversations about change, a movement sparked by the courage to confront the system and the unwavering commitment to value each individual over profit. In that final moment, the moral became crystal clear. Success built on genuine care and respect is the only legacy that truly endures. Remember, it's not about the transactions or the headlines. It's about the heart behind every story. If this story touched you, let it remind you to always put people before numbers. Like, share, and subscribe for more stories that inspire change. Because every act of kindness lights the path to a better future.